Hey Rick, do you know what time it is?
Is it time for Totally Random Question?
No, it is actually time for episode number 100.
Episode number 100.
Yeah.
Wow, so that's roughly, 4 years now?
I don't know.
I think we started in 2021.
And we're doing like 26 a year every 2 weeks.
So that's 4 years.
Sounds legit.
So I think in those 4 years we had quite a few awesome guests.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have quite a few awesome ones still to come. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm not done yet.
Definitely not done yet. Let's get this one started.
Let's go.
Hey there, welcome to Betatalks the Podcast.
I'm Rick.
And I'm Oscar. And today we are joined by Rendle, who is a software development consultant at RendleLabs.
Hello.
Welcome, Rendle.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
So, how have you been?
I've been insanely busy. It's been a mad couple of months. I've done, I think, 6 conferences in 2 months, which was a lot. But also incredibly good fun. Met a load of amazing people, caught up with friends, learned some new interesting things. It's a pretty good life actually.
Yeah, and those were probably all not within like 20-minute bike rides of your home, right?
No, I think the worst one in terms of travel was I decided to drive to Berlin and back.
Oh wow!
So I drove there on a Sunday and then drove back on a Wednesday, which was a bit much, but I had to take a whole bunch of musical instruments and equipment and things because we were doing a gig. So it was easier than taking it all on the plane.
Yeah, you are a member of the Line Breakers, if I'm not mistaken.
I am. Yeah. I am the tech industry's premier parody band.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, for people not familiar, could you maybe explain a bit what it is that you do and maybe more specifically how you do this? Because it's so much fun.
It started with I was doing a quiz show with Dylan Beattie, and we had a round. It was like a comedy quiz show, so like Have I Got News for You or Mock the Week or something like that. And there was a round that was called Bot or Not, and you had to guess if tweets were from a bot or a real person. And Dylan found one that found Google News headlines that fit the meter of "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel. Mm-hmm. And the whole round, we had another round, which was, is it a Baltic capital city or a JavaScript framework or something like that, or a Klingon word or a JavaScript framework? And I said, do you think you could do a version of We Didn't Start the Fire with just frameworks? And so Dylan went off and wrote it and then performed it just by himself. And then he wrote a couple of other songs and he was performing them just by himself. And he was just taking his guitar along to things. Mm-hmm. And then he met Vagiv, who plays keyboards. Mm-hmm. And Vagiv went, oh, can I play with you? And then they picked up Don Syme, the creator of F-sharp, played bass. And then Heather Downing does female vocals. We have Hannes Lauet plays second guitar. Eli Holderness plays French horn, and will be playing violin next year.
Wow.
And the number of songs grew, and I had lived my whole life going, I'm not musical. I can't do music, but I could write lyrics. And so I wrote the words to a couple of songs, and Dylan made me sing one of them, and I don't like singing. But then Don very sadly had to step down because he switched jobs and is working at GitHub next, so he didn't have time. And I just said, how difficult is the bass though, really? Because it's only got 4 strings. How hard can it be? And so Dylan lent me one, and I learned to play Seven Nation Army, which is incredibly easy on the bass, in about 30 minutes. And I thought, I can maybe actually do this. And so now I am part of the band, and if you want to book us for your conference, the easiest way to do it is to book enough of the band members to give talks. And then we'll send you a rider telling you what equipment, amplifiers, front of house, all that sort of stuff that we need. And we will put on anything from a 1 hour to I think we've got like 3 hours of material now, so we can do an entire evening. We've got a lot of songs.
And those are all either unique songs or covers, making it tech-like, or do you also
they are
do
covers of rock and roll and rock, and I think there's a couple of metal bits in there. There's a few pop things, but they're all with parody lyrics. And so the one I generally use to explain to non-technical people what it is that we do is we have a song called HTML to the tune of Highway to Hell. So you can probably guess how that goes.
It's already in my head.
I think I heard that at Azure Lowlands. It's in your
quite
HTML.
possibly, yes. That would have been last year, I think. Hannes and Dylan were both there. But yes, and we do Mac Life to the tune of Park Life. We've got You Give Rest a Bad Name to the Bon Jovi song. And it's so much fun. And yeah, we did a gig in Berlin where they were going to put us in a separate room, which was concrete and everything, and we made a fuss, and so they let us play in the hotel bar, which had a proper kind of stage with sound system and everything. And there were people in the hotel who were not at the conference and had no idea what we were doing, but they still came up and gathered around the stage and were kind of dancing and clapping and everything. And then we did another one just a couple of weeks ago at Build Stuff in Vilnius, and that was a party. That was a really, really good night.
First of all, it sounds like so much fun, right?
Yeah.
But also, it's so far away from what people thought about our industry, let's say 20 or 15 years ago.
Yeah. And I'm going to try and take some of the credit for this. When was it? It was in the early 2010s. I was at Build Stuff in Vilnius, Lithuania. And I used to do stand-up comedy. So from 1999 to 2001, I was a professional stand-up comedian, but I hated it. And so I quit and came back to programming. And Greg Young, who was running Build Stuff with Naringa at the time, found out about this and went, "Oh, you could be the compere at the attendee party and just tell jokes and introduce the different acts and all this sort of thing." And I went, "Yes, okay." And so I was talking to people and I was, just doing standard comparing things like, "So what language do you use?" "Ruby." "I'm sorry." "Ruby." "No, I'm just sorry." And that sort of thing. And then they had a closing keynote, and I won't name any names. It was fascinating, I'm sure. And if it had been in a slot in the conference, then it would have been a fantastic talk. But it was incredibly academic, very, very dry. And everybody is exhausted after 3 days of talks. And someone tweeted at Build Stuff, "Next year, let Mark do the closing keynote." And they went, "Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Yes, okay." And so I wrote the worst programming language ever, which is primarily intended as a funny talk. It's designed to make people laugh. And so it's designed to go in that last slot. And then it just kind of snowballed from there, this idea of having entertaining keynotes, and other speakers are doing it. And, I'm not saying I invented it. I'm not saying nobody was doing funny talks before me. There was like the JavaScript WAT talk and things. And James Mickens has been doing these things for a long time. But certainly at the conferences that I do, I kind of created an opportunity, and then people were asking Dylan and me to do our quiz or to do a pub quiz or to do, just put on some fun talks, and we became like the entertainment committee for NDC. And then it's just kind of grown out from there. But yeah, it's bringing a little bit of fun and a bit of a break from the sort of just session after session after session of hardcore technical content, and we're just kind of like, "Hey, come switch off your brain and listen to some stupid songs, or listen to this silly talk that I've written that goes in the last slot of the day."
Well, the good thing there is that I think it also exemplifies the growth our community has gone through, and everything around our community has gone through, because for instance, now there is a space in which you can, like you said, switch your brain off and just have fun. Yeah. But also, we're a lot more open to other types of people, to people who might have different opinions, different ways of doing things, or even different requirements, as in a quiet room or something like that.
Yes,
I think we've come a
absolutely.
long way there, right?
I mean, I meet people. I meet a lot of people. I go to a lot of conferences. I meet a lot of people because, I do my talk, and then people want to come and talk to me afterwards. There's a guy who is quite severely has quite severe autism, who travels around and speaks at conferences, and they accommodate him and they accommodate his needs and everything. And I'm in awe of that guy with the challenges he has to do what he does. And I'm seeing more and more people who've just had kids actually bringing their family with them. So you got sort of babies and things around. And in general, I think, because I don't know if this is still a true statistic, but they say the number of developers sort of in professional software development doubles every year. I think that might have capped out, but the audience generally skews young. And so the attitudes and beliefs and values are those of sort of the millennials and the Generation Z. And so they are very accepting, and people can, for the most part, just be themselves, as far as I've seen.
Which is very important. I mean, that's the most important thing, right? That you can be yourself, and that if we can accommodate, or if conferences can accommodate, the question is, why wouldn't you? As far as I'm concerned.
The only thing where I think it still needs a lot of work is the way that women are often treated at conferences. If you see a woman at a conference, then she is there for the same she is there to see talks and network and meet people in a professional capacity and learn things. She is probably not there looking for a date. And so it is not appropriate to ask. And that message seems to be taking a while to sink in for some people. And the same with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not a dating site. Okay.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yes.
Wow.
There we go. Maybe we can do that. I'm going to see if I can register that.
I think I have it already.
Okay. That's a horrible name. Anyhow, no, I totally agree with you on that one, because, and I've told this story before. You just mentioned Heather, right? I talked to Heather quite a couple of years ago when she was at, what was it? Techorama, I think.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm quite nervous because there's people in the audience that expect me to fail.
Yes.
But that's, I still can't understand how or why that works in somebody's brain, because why can't you just be in awe of what somebody can do, knows, wants to share with you, and takes the
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen Heather speak several times, and she's insanely smart.
Oh, yes.
She knows an awful lot more than me about an awful lot of things, and I will happily just sit there and learn from her. I don't know what the issue is. I don't know. There's a socialization, cultural issues. People from certain countries or parts of the world tend to have more regressive attitudes, and I think it's a matter of kind of not criticizing them, but trying to educate them and so forth. But no, it's depressing the way women are still being treated by a lot of men in the tech community, and I really wish it would stop.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And let's hope that this, even if it changes the mind of only one person, then that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
I would like to go back a little bit because I have to mention it. I would like to go back to the funny talks and the funny either keynotes or ending speeches. I think I've seen the Met File Unfucker story twice now. Each and every time, I almost shit myself laughing because it's such a great story, especially
Thank you.
how it came about, right? And
Yes.
So without giving too much away, could you maybe give like a short summary of what it actually is about?
A short summary of what happened. We released a new version of a piece of software that when you try to open one of the save files from the old version, it corrupted it and wrote it back to the disk. And so someone from support came to me saying, the new version's broken and all the med files are fucked. Can you write something to fix them? And so I went, I'll have a look, send me a couple of samples. And so he did. And so I was kind of like, I think I can fix this. And I wanted something sort of standalone. So I fired up Visual Basic 6 and I created a new project, and I couldn't think of what to call it. So I called it unfucker.exe. And it had a file open dialog that said choose the med file to unfuck, and then it had a sort of message box with a unfuck now button, and then it had a progress bar saying unfucking med file, and then it had a message at the end saying med file successfully unfucked. Exit. And I thought this is quite funny. And so I sent it to the support guy as a joke. I went, can you just check this works and then we'll change the names? And he obviously just released it. Just didn't even look at it and just didn't even look at the file name, just forwarded it on to a company. And the next I heard about it was 2 days later from my CEO, because he had got a complaint from the CEO of one of our customers who had been the first person to run this thing. So yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so in my defense, I think I was 25, 26 at the time. So my brain had literally only just finished forming. So yes, I don't do things like that anymore.
No, but still,
not even in comments.
No, but still, no, I understand. But still, if you're working, if it's a work in progress for your feeling, and you say, hey, test this out, see if this works.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, right?
It is, yes.
It says more about the release process that it's not really...
I think at the time I sort of tried to shirk the blame onto as many other people as possible, but at the end of the day, if there's something going out there called unfucker.exe and I'm the one who called it that, the buck does stop here.
Did you take a moment to try to make that abbreviation work, that it's actually something technical?
No. That's a complete coincidence. It's the universal new file.
I didn't notice
something. Yeah. Oh dear.
That's so good. But this is part of a programming created mistakes talk, right? You did.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
which was it's a lot of fun. And the nice thing with that talk in particular is it evolves as time goes on. So every time I do it, there's a new mistake. Like the last time I did it, CrowdStrike made an appearance from earlier this year. Yeah. But also it gets tuned for different conferences. So when I did Azure and AI Lowlands, I put in some cloud and AI stuff. And for sort of language, if I was doing Vox Days or Devox or GoTo or something, then I would put in some Java stuff like the ECDSA algorithm, which you could bypass by setting things to 0. And that's, this is the thing. It's such a rich seam of material that I could do different versions of that talk for the next 20 years. And hopefully I will.
But that's also the power and maybe even the privilege that you have with having a decent amount of experience and knowing a lot of people. That there's more to pick from, right? And I can even imagine people coming up to you and saying, have you heard this story? That might be funny to incorporate.
They totally do. Yeah. They totally do. Although the one that gets that the most is the worst programming language ever.
Yeah, because that's so opinionated, right?
It's very opinionated, and it's so it's not picking a language and pointing at it and saying that's the worst language. It's starting with PHP, which everyone kind of thinks is the worst language, and then adding features that I don't like from other languages to make it worse. So the only conditional is unless. There's no if. It's just unless. And else unless as well, which is from Ruby, because I just don't know why you would have unless. Ruby people go, it's because it's like writing a sentence, and I'm kind of like, but you're saying throw an exception unless everything's okay, which is the wrong way round. That's like going, everybody get out unless there's not a fire. And so yes, and then by the end I've brought in stuff from Go and Forth and there's a Greek question mark in there, which looks like a semicolon, and all sorts of stuff.
To screw up someone's bit.
Exactly. And then I like to leave 10 minutes at the end and do some audience interaction and get people to kind of shout out things that they like. But it then goes on to YouTube, and it's got the loveliest YouTube. So the one I did at NDC Oslo in 2021 is somewhere around 1.5 million views now. Mm-hmm. And it's got the loveliest comments thread, I'm pretty sure, on the whole of YouTube, because it's just people going, "Oh, you think that's bad? You should have this from this language." And so or correcting me on sort of issues with COBOL or whatever. So yeah, that's the one that gets the most feedback, and I think gets the most people excited. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's always fun to have a light session like this around conferences, especially multi-day conferences, because like you said, yeah, it'll drain you, and it helps in also charging the social battery again a bit.
Yes, yeah, I mean, it mainly it became a regular thing with NDC, and they were giving me the biggest room for the last slot of the conference, and sort of advertising it as, if you've had enough, you can go here and listen to Rendle, and then it's bad enough being in the graveyard slot because everyone's really tired from other people's point of view. I'm this weird person who loves it, but from the other people, they're doing this graveyard slot, and then I was stealing their audiences as well. And so eventually Jacob at NDC just went, "You know what, we're just going to give you the last slot. We'll call it a lock note," as in the opposite of a keynote. And then you get the terror because the conference is finished. They do the raffle, or all the raffles, and people win their Legos and their Quest 3 headsets and whatever else. And then it's basically, you could now go to the pub. You could go to the pub with your friends. You could go anywhere. You could get a head start getting to the airport. You can do whatever you want. There's only this idiot and his silly, funny talk left to do. And every single time I worry that nobody's going to stay. And every single time I get a few hundred people who do. And
so even though you're such a well-known name in the industry, and I think somebody that attracts audiences, even you have maybe
imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, no. It's a very hard balancing act psychologically, because on one level, I know that I am this celebrity in a very kind of niche, and that, having my name and my photo on your conference website will probably help you sell a few tickets. It will probably sort of give you an air of legitimacy. But at the same time, it's just me, and I think I don't find it difficult to get up on a stage and make people laugh. It's, I spent 2 years professionally, but it was 7 years of slogging around and doing open mic nights and all that sort of thing. So I am extremely comfortable on stage. And I think the issue, what generally causes imposter syndrome, is you find the thing that you're doing easy. And so therefore you assume it is easy, and therefore you're not special for doing it and anybody could do it. And you don't know why people are making such a fuss about you being good at it, because you kind of go, well, anyone could do this. But actually, 95% of the people at a conference wouldn't ever get up on that stage and speak into a microphone. So yeah, it's and then I have to remember, particularly, I'd like to encourage and mentor newer speakers and give them advice on sort of writing abstracts, getting into the bigger conferences, helping them with their talks and all that sort of thing. And if in front of them I talk myself down, then I don't think that's a good message to be sending. If everybody thinks I'm an amazing speaker, but I'm saying, no, I'm not that great, I'm just average, then to speakers who are aspiring to get to the point where they're being offered keynotes, I think that's not the right message to be sending. So I try to be realistic without sounding too boastful and full of myself.
But that's always a balance. You already said that, but that's always a balance because, I mean, Oscar and I live in the Netherlands, and here one of the sayings is act normal, then you're crazy enough. So people don't really maybe don't even accept when you are overly confident. So it's also really hard to like you said, on one hand be well, no, I'm not that special. It's just, but not talking yourself down too much. And I think it's really good to have in mind that newer speakers, if they look at you, or aspiring speakers, if they look at you and think, oh, if he even thinks he's average, then what am I doing here?
That's it. So, if he's average, then what am I?
Yeah.
And so, no, the message I'm trying to emphasize in all of these exchanges is this is just practice. This is just years and years and years of doing this. Yeah. And you become good at stuff if you do it enough. And so the newer speakers, the people that I'm sort of mentoring or advising, keep doing it, keep plugging away, get as many opportunities to get up on stage and speak to people as possible, and you will develop your own voice, you'll develop a personality that works, and so anybody can do what I can do, but not straight away. Is the thing. It's practice.
No, but it's being yourself and getting comfortable doing the thing you're already good at. Because most people aspiring this probably are good at their work, and they feel that they can on one-on-one or in their small team can mentor people to something. It's like, I know enough about this,
and they probably have a story to tell, because otherwise you wouldn't aspire to do that, right?
I think everyone has a story to tell. So,
absolutely.
And getting to be a good speaker, as I think, mostly really wanting to do that, because it takes some nerves in the beginning. But just continuing and becoming yourself, even though you're on a stage and people are watching, or some cameras in your face.
And the number one piece of advice that I give to people who maybe are sort of looking at speakers and going to conferences and thinking, I'd quite like to do that, but I don't know what to talk about. Is you may not think you're a subject expert on something. If you talk to more experienced speakers, a lot of them will say, if you want to become a subject expert on something, get a talk on it accepted and then do the research.
We call that, Oscar and I call that conference-driven learning.
Exactly, conference-driven learning. But the other sort of aspect to it is, if you make a talk that is about your experience with something, is about how you got from naught to in production with any technology or pattern or framework or whatever it might be, but if it's your personal story, then nobody else can give that talk. And that's the thing you're looking for, is why it should be book you.
Because it's your story and the details are yours. So no one will also point out, but this is incorrect, or this was the actual.
This is how we did it.
Yeah. Worst case scenario.
To get in. Yeah.
Worst case scenario, somebody goes, actually, there's a better way to do that, and you go, oh, brilliant, thanks, and you go
Wish
back
I
and
knew.
you change it, and then next time you do the talk, go, I lost it. So yes,
I put the solution on GitHub. Go build me a
that's
a
it
pull
exactly.
request.
Yeah,
make it better, please.
But yes, if you're telling your own story, then it's more likely to come across in your voice than if you're trying to be a teacher. So that's what I
it's hard.
recommend
Like in the beginning, I think I made the mistake by almost doing a one-on-one demo that Microsoft would have done for a product, and replicated something like that and figured out everything by myself. I learned a lot. It weren't my best talks.
No.
The best ones were like, you see this thing that should work like this?
It doesn't.
I've been working with it a few months, and this is everything that's not working, or this is working, but you can do it like it's all your paths and your the sharp edges on a new tool, and like that's also fun because you're extremely confident, and you can also diverge a bit from the plan then. Because you know
absolutely.
what's there.
And and there may very well be a handful of people at the conference who know more about whatever you're talking about than you do. But there's so much going on in tech these days that there will be a few hundred people who've probably never heard of what you're talking about and might think, oh, that sounds interesting. So just submit and get accepted, and then get on stage and start getting good.
Yeah. And then start with a local user group or whatever.
Yeah. And you could also find people that run user groups and ask them, hey, give me a slot or help.
I mean, my experience with user groups is they are desperate for speakers, for content. They are always looking for new people to come and talk about stuff. And that is the best place. That's really where everyone starts out, doing user groups in their local area.
Yeah, true. Oscar, do you know what time it is?
Is it time for totally random question?
It is time for a totally random question.
See, I have it here. Oof. What is the one thing that you think is totally overrated?
Not necessarily tech specific, right?
Okay, so I'm going to choose one non-tech thing and one tech thing.
That's
so
cool.
Non-tech thing, Peter Kay, the British comedian, who I have never found funny.
I don't even know him.
Well,
really?
you're lucky. But there you go for the British people listening. That's that. In tech, it's a very easy answer, and it's generative AI and LLMs. It's hopelessly overblown, and the bubble is starting to strain at the edges, I think. We're really struggling to find the killer use case for it, and it's running out of steam.
I was reading an elaborate blog post this week about like all kinds of proof that we're actually hitting the wall everywhere. And
was that Ed Zitron, the Where's Your Ed At blog? Yes, I read that. But yeah, he makes some excellent points, and he appears to know what he's talking about. And so, we should probably listen to him.
Yeah, and of course we go with a lot of technology through that Gartner hype cycle, or like someone made up a graph, and kind of true always. And like I was waiting for the what is it, the trough of dissolution, or what is it, the
trough of dissolution? Yeah.
So I think we are in it. We see that it's not evolving much. Everyone's expecting too much from it. I hope we will get to some point that we still find it useful. But I was most scared in that post about the numbers I saw, where it was basically still costing much more everywhere, even like things like the Copilot and stuff.
Yeah, they're
losing
money on every query, and there's probably sort of more than $100 billion worth of VC capital currently sloshing around all the AI startups. And honestly, the only thing I really want from AI or from the generative thing is use it to make Siri better. Yeah. So that I can have an ongoing conversation with Siri, and she kind of holds context and remembers what we're talking about and that sort of thing.
Yeah, bridge the gap between like a language and the computer, like so we can start programming again after that. Like I'm definitely using it in our company in the product, but only where it makes complete sense. Where it doesn't make sense to parse all kinds of documents with regex or whatever, that you just get the content out of it.
And the other thing I think it needs to be genuinely useful is you need to be able to talk to it. Typing it blocks you. You think too much about what you're typing when you're typing it. When you talk, it just comes out. Yeah. And if you could just use a microphone and talk to Copilot or Claude or Pieces or whatever while you're coding, and just go, hey, can you add doc comments to all these methods in this class? then, I think that's what it needs to do before it actually becomes really compelling.
But still, in most cases, still a lot more useful than any blockchain I've ever seen.
Oh, yes.
You're really on the blockchain age, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have said blockchain. Yes. And, the best way to get the most VC capital at the moment is to come up with some way of merging AI and blockchain together. And yeah.
And call it LinkedIn,
and call it LinkedIn. Yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So we actually completely skipped you, or at least your introduction into how you came to where you are. You told me us a little bit about you being a stand-up comedian for a little bit of time. But how did your career look like roughly? Where did you start out?
It's very unusual because I left school at 16 for family reasons, and yes, I had no parental support or anything. And there was an ad in the local newspaper in the town where I lived saying, "Hey, do you want to be a programmer? Come along and we will train you, and then you'll start making lots of money." And so I went along, and I did the interview, and the guy who interviewed me said, "So generally what we're trying to get is university graduates, and so minimum age 21, and I am 16, just about to turn 17." And he says, "But you're so enthusiastic and passionate that you can come and be the tech support person and make cables and make sure the printer has toner and all this sort of stuff. But when you're not doing that, you can use the facilities and learn C and Infomix 4GL and databases and all that sort of thing." And so, yeah, I did that for a year. And at one point I was working in a fish and chip shop peeling potatoes because the company couldn't afford to pay me to do stuff. And it was a couple of pretty tough years. But then when I was 18, they just started lying on my CV and saying I was 21 and sending me out on contracts. And I was 18 years old. I think I was making £45,000 a year, which was ridiculous. And then after 3 years of that, when I actually was 21 and I could have gone out on and not had a lie on my CV, but they said, "Do you want to come back into the office and train the next sort of batches of recruits?" And so I did that for a while. And then they sent me out for sort of short-term consulting things. And one of those, I was in London for like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week working with this company. And they had arranged a trip to the Comedy Store in Leicester Square for the Thursday night. Thursday night, they have open spots. And I'd been sort of telling jokes. I've always used humor as a defense mechanism, as my therapist would say. So I've been sort of telling jokes for it. And they had a couple of open spots at the Comedy Store and they weren't very good. And I was quite drunk, and people were saying, "You'd be funny. You should see if they'll give you an open spot." And so I went off and found a guy who had a book, and I said, "Can I have an open spot?" And he just opened the book up and went, "July 14th. And I'm kind of like, right, all right. And then I told everybody I knew so that I couldn't chicken out of it. And quite a lot of friends came along on the night. And then, yeah, I spent, so that was 94. And so then 5 years schlepping around doing open spots and all this sort of thing. And then I won a competition, a sort of national competition sponsored by the Times newspaper, and got signed to a talent, a management comedy agency, and did 2 years of professional stand-up, which involves doing corporate gigs where you have to hand out the prizes for best salesman of the year for Utrecht region or whatever. I got booked to do a very rich kid's birthday party because she liked comedy.
Wow.
And there's a lot of travel, a lot of very, very cheap bed and breakfasts because you're not getting paid that much money. And I was just like, why am I doing this when I could be making 3-4 times as much money doing the other thing that I'm good at? And so, yeah, I went back to programming and tech, and I've managed to survive 35 years, not counting those couple of years of doing comedy. But I have resisted the pull of the management track, and so I'm still kind of lead developer, lead architect, but very much a hands-on coding architect, a kind of building the example system and then saying to other people, use these patterns, write it like this, that sort of thing. But yeah, I've gone from at first I was like wonder kid. It's, my God, this kid's only 17, 18 years old, and look at what he's doing. He's amazing, and he's a 10x programmer or whatever. Whereas now I'm just one of the old farts who's been doing this for years, and I've seen it all before. And this is like my third time around the cycle of change. And yeah, no, it's a nice. I've basically had a brilliant time for most of it. And certainly the last 10 years when I've been doing all this entertainment stuff. And, people, they pay my flight, they pay my hotel, they feed me. I get to go to all these different cities all around the world, stand up in front of people, show off, play bass sometimes in a band. I mean, it's ridiculous. I just, every now and then, I just think, how... I'm so lucky, and privileged. I mean, there is a huge amount of privilege in here, and I am very aware of that, and I'm very, very grateful for my life and my friends, the people I've met, everything. It is wonderful,
and it's to me it feels like something that would be great if you have two things that you like doing, comedy and tech. And then you can combine them in such a way that, like you said, people will bring you over and say, "Hey, could you come over here and do that funny tech talk again?" Because
yes. I mean, probably the number one thing, and this is within the sort of wider speaker community and all these people I know who are also speakers, is that I don't fill in CFPs. I very rarely submit to a call for papers because I'm so busy doing the conferences that people just invite me to do that I don't know when I would fit in the ones. But this year I did a couple of DevOps conferences, which is Java. And up to now, I've basically been doing .NET conferences, but I'm hoping to speak at 1 or 2 PyCons next year. And I'm really excited about that because I can go and watch talks from other ecosystems, and it's all new. It's all kind of stuff I don't know, and seeing what Python people are excited about or Java people are excited about. And it's brilliant. I'm meeting, a whole new set of other speakers and attendees and everything else.
Don't be disappointed if everything is about AI.
Yeah, I honestly, there are AI talks at all the conferences now, both talks about AI and I think in a couple of cases talks written by AI and just delivered by a human. But yeah, I think it goes back to the fact that we haven't really found that killer application for it. And so people they're struggling to find use cases to talk about. So while the AI content is there, it's not taking over to the extent that some people thought it would.
Yeah, but in the end, and we've talked about this earlier, in the end, a personal story about somebody who tried a new piece of technology, hit a few walls, and is telling you how they overcame that, is so much more interesting than just facts on paper and somebody reading it out, right?
Yes, yeah. One of my favorite talks I've done was how not to start up, because I had a couple of startups and just no. the sort of key takeaway from it was there's this idea that if you build it, they will come, and that's not true. It's rubbish. If you build it and market it successfully, then they will come. But if you don't market it at all, then they will not, and they won't know it's there, and so on. So yeah. But no, learning from other people's mistakes or learning what worked for somebody else makes it much easier than just abstract. There's this API call and this API call and this object and this process and whatever. It's much easier to absorb this information if it's attached to a concrete story and a well-told story.
Yes, and I mean that's a whole art in itself. Good storytelling.
Storytelling, yeah. It's very important. Like I was in October, was in Techrama, always awesome conference. But I tend to go to the ones that go either very deep in something, even AI, but then really back to the mouth or whatever, something that interests me, or something that is even like detached from the technology.
Yes,
like I went to talk by Leila. With Leila Bugia.
Yeah, but critical thinking, right?
No, she did a talk about was about messaging and all kinds of patterns and stuff. But like, it doesn't even matter which technology you're using or whatever. It's like, this is architecture. This is the decisions you will find. This is the problems you will have and solve it. And like, but you cannot have the one option that will solve everything.
There's no such thing as a silver bullet.
Yeah, and I love those because you really connect those to experiences you have yourself. Or it's like, oh, actually, good insight. Yeah. I'm struggling with this problem right now, or maybe later, and you will remember this. And I like that so much more than basically the product demos, which let the companies do them because they build the product.
And then
better at it.
And then Leila is a great storyteller as well. So
definitely.
Oh, she's a wonderful speaker. I could watch her all day.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Rendle, is there anything that you would like to get back to, or anything that you would like to add where you think this is what the listeners need to know before we sign off?
I would just say if you get the opportunity to come and see me at a conference and do one of these silly talks, then please go for it. If you run a conference and you're looking for somebody to come and do that kind of thing, then I'm at rendle.dev on Blue Sky. And yeah, I really just want to reiterate the point. If you are attending user groups or conferences and thinking, I could do that, I could be on the other side of that microphone, please give it a try, because we need a constant supply of new speakers coming along and speaking about new things in new voices. Otherwise, the whole scene just becomes completely stale. And so if you're at a conference and you are thinking, I would like some advice about how to get started, and I'm there, then please come up and talk to me. I'm not scary. I'm not famous. I'm not Tom Cruise or anything. Yes, you can have a selfie if you want one. That's so weird to me that people want them, but that's absolutely fine. But yeah, or reach out on Blue Sky or LinkedIn, and I'm happy to give advice to people who want to get started in speaking.
We'll make sure to add your the links to your profiles on the episode description, so that if anybody wants to reach out to you, they will be easy to find.
Cool. Thank you.
Rendle, thanks so much. It was awesome having you on the show.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks.
Yeah, real pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Betatalks the Podcast. Betatalks is made possible by Betabit Managed Software Development.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.